Avengers Endgame redefined how we see superhero movies. Not only was it a 3-hour romp that almost seamlessly blended together 22 movies worth of world building, but it also reminded us of all the incredible movie moments the MCU has given us over the past 11 years. Leading up to the release of Endgame, a group of YouTube video essayist giants assembled to create their own movie analysis version of an Avengers team-up. And they called this event One Marvelous Scene. In this series, each YouTuber chose their favorite scene from the Marvel Universe and analyzed what made it so great. Nando V Movies did the after party from Age of Ultron, the Cosmonaut Variety Hour did the farm scene from the end of Infinity War, and Captain Midnight did the I'm Always Angry scene from the first Avengers. And that's only 3 of them. Video after video, these guys covered every single iconic Marvel scene. Except one. They missed one of the most revealing, influential, and insightful battles to hit the screen. A scene that pits Spider-Man against Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and the Hulk in an epic fight for justice. That's right, everyone. Flashing back to Spider-Man Homecoming, I'm talking about the ATM robbery scene. Now, it might seem like I'm fishing here because, like I said, every other obviously impactful scene was already taken. But this no-name villain fight scene is so fantastic because within 3 minutes in the first act of the movie, it summarizes everything that happens in Spider-Man Homecoming, from the plot to Peter's character to the narrative's theme. So today, I'm going to dissect that idea and explain why this simple ATM robbery is one marvelous scene. Starting with, number 1, the plot. This fight was a major turning point in Spider-Man Homecoming. Prior to this run-in, Peter Parker never experienced any real danger or anyone trying to kill him. He was just your typical friendly neighborhood Spider-Man doing friendly neighborhood Spider-Man things like stopping car crashes, giving old ladies directions, and doing flips like a trained spider monkey for the amusement of passers-by. Sure, he fought in Avengers Civil War, but as Iron Man so eloquently stated,
"Trust me, kid, Cap wanted to lay you out, he would've."
That quote doesn't apply to the fake Avengers robbing the ATMs who were evidently not afraid to ruffle Spider-Man's web, which is a nice gradual slope to raising the stakes and gets us ready for the main villain, the Vulture, who we would later learn is okay with killing people if he needs to. And acted as the inciting incident that made Peter begin his quest that was the focus of the plot in this movie.
So how do jerks like you get tech like this?
It sets all of this up while simultaneously telling the audience that the central conflict of Homecoming is limited to the scope of the city by way of the robbers in the scene only trying to rob ATMs. It kinda parallels the rest of the movie, where the Vulture isn't aiming to take over the world or kill half the life in the universe. He wants to steal alien stuff and sell the guns he makes to small-time criminals. This movie isn't on some grand scale. Yeah, it's a big deal in the scope of the narrative, but going back to Iron Man to support my point.
Steady, Crockett, there are people who handle this sort of thing.
The Avengers?
No, just a little below their pay grade.
However, the tone of the conflict isn't the only thing the scene establishes. It foreshadows everything that's going to happen through the entire movie. To illustrate that concept, here's a description that works to explain both the events of the ATM robbery and the full runtime of the picture. Spider-Man is an awkward, dopey kid wearing a suit Iron Man gave him that's too cool for his vibe. Spidey acts more confident than he should for his skill level and does cocky yet awkward teenage superhero things. While doing said superhero things, he encounters an under-the-radar outlaw that wears a full face mask and carries human-alien hybrid weapons. Spider-Man, pretending he's more competent than he is, tries to stop the villain from carrying out a fairly small-scale crime. But since Spider-Man doesn't know what he's doing, he inadvertently causes the situation to escalate beyond the scope of what the villain originally intended. This leads to property damage that probably costs more than the amount that would have been stolen or lost if Spider-Man hadn't intervened, and possibly put people in jeopardy that weren't even involved. Spider-Man ends up winning the fight but loses something he loves, and in the end, he saves the cat. See? It all lines up perfectly. Now some of you might be thinking, but Ariana, that ATM scene was the only time in the movie when Spider-Man saves a cat. That moment doesn't apply to the end of the film. Well, my skeptical viewer, I argued that the full movie version of the cat is the Vulture. I'll explain it all in the next section of this video titled, Number 2, Spider-Man's Character. This scene perfectly sums up the type of person Peter Parker is. A perseverant and empathetic teenage boy with a strong sense of morality. This is conveyed by him going into a burning building that got caught in the crossfire of the bank battle to save a cat. That connection between character and action may seem like a shallow way of explaining his personality, but saving the cat has some roots in popular film theory literature. Screenwriter Blake Snyder coined the term saving the cat in his book appropriately titled Save the Cat. He defines saving the cat as a moment in a movie where the hero does something that defines who he is and makes the audience like him. It's essentially the point when the protagonist displays an empathetic or likable quality that makes you want to keep watching him or her. For reference, the first Save the Cat moment I can remember in a superhero movie was in 1978's Superman, when he literally rescues a random girl's cat from a tree. This happens before Superman is recognized as a public figure in the timeline of the narrative. And since this was the first superhero movie basically ever made, it establishes who Superman is to the audience. But the audience watching Homecoming is probably already familiar with Spider-Man's character. We've made a connection with him over years of exposure to different versions of the franchise. This wasn't even the first time we saw him in a Disney Marvel movie, so we didn't necessarily need to see him save the cat. We know who he is and that he's a good person. But in the whole of the MCU, especially in Spider-Man Homecoming, this cat snippet is the first time he does something genuinely heroic. That's monumental considering what he does in the scenes leading up to this one. Before the cat saving, he stopped someone from stealing a bike, then left that bike unprotected in the open, asked a bunch of people waiting for the bus,
Everybody good?
and beat up some guy who looked like he was stealing what turns out to be that guy's own car. That's all fine, but famously Spider-Man's MO is helping the little guy. He wants to protect those who can't protect themselves. Or at least that was his thing in Civil War. But in this movie, we see Spider-Man after Civil War, after he's had a taste of the superhero big leagues. When Tony Stark and him had their first meeting in Peter's room, Peter confessed he became a vigilante because he felt he had a responsibility to help the helpless.
Yeah, just looking out for the little guy. That's what it is.
But at this point, it seems like he's only doing all this hero stuff to impress Stark. It's more of a job to him now. Like in Disney's Hercules, when Zeus told Hercules the way to become a god again was to become a true hero. And Hercules subsequently starts looking for fights with monsters and gets really excited when bad things happen to people so he can swoop in, save the day, and prove himself.
You're really choked up about this, aren't you?
That pretty much describes Spider-Man in most of Homecoming. The movie tells us that Peter isn't as sincere about his heroing anymore through both everyone around Peter noting that his Spider-Manning, aka the Stark internship, has only recently started consuming his life, and by how he's constantly updating Happy on his little adventures swinging around Queens.
I'm responsible for making sure you're responsible, okay?
Peter staying out looking for these quote-unquote big-ticket crimes like the ATM robberies when he should have been sleeping only makes sense within the context of him trying to show Iron Man he can play with the big boys. It doesn't necessarily fit within the Spider-Man brand of serving the little guy or his scope of expertise. He obviously didn't know what he was doing. He was just trying to be like Iron Man. If anything, him going to stop that faux Avengers ATM fiasco better fits with his goal he expressed here
I just wanted to be like you.
than here.
Yeah, just looking out for the little guy.
But by saving that cat from the burning building, a small animal that wouldn't have been able to make it out by itself, Spider-Man displayed that he's the same kind, morally driven kid that believes with great power comes great responsibility.
Hey, come on, you're gonna shoot somebody shooting me!
Spider-Man saving the cat in his ATM robbery scene is reflected in his saving the cat gesture at the end of the movie with the Vulture. Spider-Man didn't need to tell the Vulture that his wingsuit was about to blow up, and he didn't need to pull him out of that wreckage after the wingsuit exploded. He especially didn't need to do it since Michael Keaton had previously threatened to kill everyone Peter loves. And you know he means it because Michael Keaton is absolutely terrifying. But like Spider-Man pulling the literal cat from the aftermath of the other alien tech, him helping the Vulture symbolized that even after all he's been through, he still has the same empathy and compassion for the little guy he exhibited in the ATM robbery save the cat moment. We still want to watch him and root for him, which is fitting considering the theme of the movie. Feeding into our next point, number 3, the theme and Peter's internal struggle. If I were to squeeze the main theme of Homecoming into a couple points, it would be about discovering who you want to be, learning that sometimes doing what's right takes will and strength, and that power and responsibility don't have the same meaning for everyone. Like I mentioned in the previous section of this video looking at Spider-Man's character, Peter Parker's main motivating force in Spider-Man Homecoming is that he wants to be a full-fledged Avenger and gain the acknowledgement and respect of Tony Stark. This seems to stem from Tony constantly talking down to him and ignoring him. Peter's reminded that Tony doesn't see him as an equal through the baby monitor and training wheels protocols on the suit, Tony not physically showing up to save him from drowning, Tony being distracted when talking to him on the phone after that drowning, and Tony's conversation with him after Peter cut that fairy in half.
No, this is where you zip it, all right? The adult is talking.
So while Peter might not be fully confident in his abilities, all the things Stark is doing to him or not doing exaggerates that feeling of not being good enough. To prove to Tony that he's not a little kid and is worth attention, he compensates for his lack of skill and experience by getting himself into these dangerous situations that he's not equipped to handle. He's basically trying to act like Tony and do the things that Tony would do. The reason Peter keeps trying to emulate him and win his approval, even though Stark belittles him and Aunt May told Peter on multiple occasions that she doesn't like Stark,
Not a fan of that Tony Stark.
is because Tony filled the role of a father when nobody else did. His teachers were just kind of coasting by their jobs and didn't put any effort into being role models.
Keep your fingers clear of the blades.
Couldn't bear to lose a student on a school trip. Not again.
Happy, the adult he interacts with most in this movie, acted more like a busy older brother that was also searching for Stark's approval.
I don't really want to talk to Nick Fury. Why?
Because if you don't talk to him, then I have to talk to him. I don't want to talk to him.
And the sandwich shop guy Peter seemed to have a good rapport with attempted to rip him off and was actively looking to hook up with Aunt May.
How's your aunt?
But Tony Stark, even with him being as distant and absentee as he was, acted more like a father than any other male authority in Peter's life. Where the teachers didn't care about the students or what they did, Stark saved Peter on several occasions and disciplined him for messing up. Where Happy didn't listen to Peter when Peter told him about the alien weapons, Stark acted on those warnings. And when the sandwich shop guy tried to steal Peter's money and have sex with his aunt, Stark gave Peter a multi-million-dollar suit and was only joking about having sex with his aunt. And that suit, training wheels protocols and all, was the one thing tethering Peter to Stark, reminding Peter that Stark cared and believed in him despite the whole absentee thing. Once Tony takes away that suit as punishment for being an idiot on that ferry, Peter has to learn how to become his own hero and rise to the occasion. But in the ATM robbery scene about 20 minutes into the movie, Peter hasn't learned that lesson yet and is still in the mindset of having to prove his worth to Tony. He's still jumping around and pretending he knows what he's doing despite not growing enough to know how to deal with a situation like this. And the movie communicates this through this identity theft poster in the ATM terminal. At first glance, the poster seems like a subtle joke about how the bad guys robbing the ATMs are all wearing Avengers masks when, spoiler alert, they're actually not the Avengers. But Peter isn't exactly being himself either. He's intentionally acting like a mini spider version of Iron Man. And I feel like this moment, when he stops to adjust his pose and think of a quippy line to say while standing beside the poster, is all just a cute way of telling us that while Peter may be acting cool and collected, he has no idea what he's doing.
You're messing with things you don't understand.
Like these delinquent bullies with alien guns. This is even alluded to in the slogan underneath the identity theft title that says, "We got you covered." It conveys that the covering Peter has on, the Spider-Man suit, makes him feel like he has the support of Tony and gives him license to act more confident than he actually is. And it doesn't end there, ladies and gentlemen. This internal struggle is put on display again in the sequence through this freaking identity theft poster. The glass covering it takes 2 mildly shattering hits through the course of this fight. The first hit comes when Spider-Man throws the fake Thor at it. He's breaking down the incredibly thin veil that these guys are the Avengers.
I'm starting to think you're not the Avengers!
But the second hit comes just as Spider-Man is losing control of the situation, and fake Captain America picks him up with the alien gravity gun and hurtles him into it, further shattering the glass. To me, the glass breaking on that identity theft poster felt like the weak armor of honor and bravado that Peter had on was slowly being broken away. He can't masquerade as an adult anymore because he isn't one. He threw himself into something he wasn't ready for and it cost him his sense of security and pride. But in the end, when the glass was cracked and he only had his mask to hide behind, he didn't gracefully stop the theft or go after the robbers. Peter went to save the cat. And that's why the ATM robbery from Spider-Man Homecoming is one marvelous scene. If you want to check out the other One Marvelous Scene videos made by other video essayists, there'll be a link to the playlist in the description of this video. Also, if you enjoyed this analysis, you can check out my other videos where I discuss and rant about movies and TV shows. There's a couple where I analyze superhero movies like why Thanos was a good guy and why J. Jonah Jameson was the best character in those 2000 Spider-Man movies. But if you're tired of superheroes, I also talk about other pop cultural phenomenon, like how the movie Coco connected Alzheimer's and the idea of legacy, the problem with 500 Days of Summer, and why I hate stage magic. And that's all I wanted to say. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.